Hi, it's Chris with the Wealth Preservation Method. And in this video, I want to walk you through a case study from one of our clients that's working with us on this deal. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in here. The first thing I want to point out to you is our investing strategy. This might be one of the most important things that you'll want to know when it comes to our model. Now, you can see here, our investing strategy is to owner finance our properties. Now, owner finance is going to be a significant difference between the investing strategy that you might be familiar with, which is the rental investing strategy. That's what most investors are getting involved with, is the rental game, where there's somebody playing a landlord, there's a property maintenance company involved, and there's a tenant involved. Okay, in our model, none of those things exist. So let's look at the difference between owner financing a property and renting a property. Let's talk about renting first, because I'm sure that's what you're most familiar with. When a renter moves into a property, a renter knows they are not going to be in charge of the maintenance. They are not going to be in charge of the taxes. They're not going to be in charge of the insurance. Okay, those are three key things. Renter moving into a property is also going to be somebody who, generally speaking, is not going to value that property as much as somebody who, let's say, was moving into the property and knew that someday they were going to own the property. Okay, so in a renter situation, there's more risk involved to the investor. The safety and security on the property goes down. Okay, the cash flow goes down. Why is that? It's because when the renter moves out someday, the investor has to go back into the property and invest 5,000, 10,000. We've had to invest as much as $30,000 before. When we used to play the rental strategy, we had to invest close to $30,000 to get a property ready for the next tenant that was going to move in. Now you can imagine, when you've got to come out of pocket with that type of cash flow, that's going to reduce the return on the investment. And then that gets passed on to you as the client, right? The investor is not going to be able to pay you as much of a return because of all the overhead expenses involved in the rental model, right? Now let's contrast that with the owner finance model, which is the model that we operate under. In an owner finance model, several things are different from the rental model. Number one, the buyer moving into the property has to give a down payment. Okay, the reason for that is we are going to play the role of the bank in the owner finance model. And what we know, just from common sense, living in the world, right, is that the banker never loses. The banker will always win, even when they lose. And I'll give you an example of that here in a minute. But I want to point out, you're talking about a different type of person when you're talking about the difference between a renter and an owner finance buyer. It's a different type of person. One of the reasons is that down payment that owner finance buyer is going to have to make. Now, in our model, we require a minimum of a $15,000 down payment, and it's usually somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000 we'll get on a down payment. So right away, you can understand there how that's going to be a different type of person than a renter, because most renters can't afford to put $15,000 to $30,000 down. So that's number one. Number two, the mindset's going to be different, right? Because when an owner finance buyer moves into the house, what's their mindset? Their mindset is what your mindset would be, and my mindset would be when we moved into our house. Like, this is my house. I want to take care of my house. I want to fix up my house. I want to put new carpet or update the kitchen or put on a new roof or put a new furnace in, whatever it might be. This is my house. There's a pride of ownership element involved with an owner finance buyer that just doesn't exist with a renter. And so we're putting owner finance buyers into our property. We're not in charge of the maintenance on the property. What does that do? That creates more cash flow, more return on the investment that we can pass on to you as the client. We're not in charge of the taxes. The owner finance buyer's paying the taxes. We're not in charge of paying the insurance. The owner finance buyer's paying the insurance. What does that do? Again, that increases the cash flow on the property. It increases the return on the property, and it allows us to push that benefit over to you as the client. Okay. Now, the other thing that the owner finance model does is it creates additional safety and security for us for all of the reasons I just mentioned. But if we were to think about, say, what some might consider a worst case scenario, what would worst case scenario be? Well, you might argue it would be the buyer, one day not being able to make their payment. Okay. This is an example of where even when the bank loses, they still win. This is that scenario. So this has only happened a few times for us, and it's because we've set the model up so that everybody wins. But when it has happened, here's how it works. Our buyer is going to get foreclosed on. Takes about 60 days to get through that process, and then the buyer is going to be evicted, just like a tenant would be. We're going to get a property back that's typically more valuable than it was when we owner financed it to the first buyer. And then what are we going to do? We're going to go get a new buyer. We're going to put them into the property, and that buyer is going to give us another $15,000 to $30,000 of a down payment. Okay, so hopefully you can start to see the added layers of safety and security that are inside of an owner finance model versus your typical rental model. In a rental model, when you've got to evict a tenant, you've got to go through that same 60-day process. But then you've got to go back in as the investor. You've got to invest $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, whatever it might be to get that property ready to go again. And you're not recouping that money. You're not getting a down payment from your renter like we do. So now you've got to do the math. Let's say you put $10,000 into the property to get it ready, and you're making a profit of, let's say, $250 a month on that property. What's the payback period before you can recoup that 10K, break even, and now get into profit? Okay, we don't have to deal with any of that math because our owner finance buyers are just a different type of person that's going into that property. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. If you've got any questions on that, write them down and we'll make sure to get them answered. Let's dive into the math here. You can see this client gave us $82,000 to purchase this property with a lifetime return potential of $295,000. I'll go ahead and explain to you here in a minute where that lifetime return potential comes from. You'll notice the location of this property is in Independence, Missouri, which is right outside of Kansas City, Missouri. It's a suburb there. You can already see the client monthly cash flow there on the screen, $820 a month. That is a 12% annualized return. If you're not familiar with our model, we give our clients two options when it comes to the returns they want to get. They can either get monthly cash flow. If you want monthly cash flow, we pay 12%, or you can choose what we call end of project cash flow, where we pay you 15% annualized return. Okay, and our projects typically go anywhere from, let's say, 6 months to 12 months. Okay, so if you're comfortable waiting till the end of a project to get your return, we can pay you a lump sum of 15% annualized return at the end of the project. Or you can say, no, Chris, I want my monthly cash flow. And then in that case, we'd pay you 12%. One thing to point out is these are interest-only payments. So in this example, this investor gave us $82,000. That money is protected by the asset, okay? And we protect it specifically with a mortgage deed of trust that's notarized and recorded at the courthouse with the client's name on it in first or second position. We protect it with an insurance policy that has the client's name on it as the lost payee. And then there's a promissory note that protects the client as well. Okay, so we have a lot of protection mechanisms in place. And then at the end of our relationship with our client's going to get, in this example, all $82,000 back from the investment, right? While they're collecting their interest-only payments every month. Okay, hopefully that's clear. Now, I did mention our client's going to be protected in either first position or second position on the mortgage deed of trust. Second position would be a scenario where a client only has, say, $15,000, $20,000 to invest, or maybe, to say it more clearly, a client can't bring all $82,000 in this example. So what we would do is we would go find another client to partner up in the deal. We'd have two clients in the deal, and then whatever client was bringing the most capital, they would get first position, on the mortgage deed of trust, and then the second client would get second position on the mortgage deed of trust. So everybody's still protected with the same legal documents and the same legal protections with the local county. It's just a matter of what position on the deed you would be. Okay. Moving along, let's look at the math on the investment itself. You can see here, we purchased this property at a 44% discount. Okay, what that means is the loan to value on this house was 56%. And you can see the math here. The client's investment was $82,000. The house was actually worth $145,000. So when you do the math on that, that's a 56% loan to value of the property, the loan being the $82,000, the value being $145,000. Or another way to look at it is we got a 44% discount on this particular property. Now, I do want to sit on this point for just a moment and point out to you that in real estate, if you haven't done real estate before, you're not really familiar with how the math works on a real estate deal, what I want you to remember is you make your money in a real estate deal when you buy, not when you sell. Let me say that again. You make your money when you buy, not when you sell. You increase the safety and security on an investment when you buy, not when you sell. Okay. This is really our number one superpower inside of the real estate investing model. And that superpower is our ability to buy properties at deep discounts. Okay. And I won't get into all the details on that, but I will say my business partner is a world-class salesman. He's been in sales his entire life. After he got out of the military as an officer, he got into sales, and he's just really good at talking to homeowners and helping them understand the full picture of what's going on with their property and helping them understand, they could go out and do the same thing we're doing. And we actually encourage them to do that, but we want them to understand what that really looks like and entails. So my business partner will walk them through that conversation. And then a lot of times these homeowners will go, oh, I didn't realize that's what was involved in actually doing that to maximize the value on this property. I don't have the time to do that. I don't want to do that. That sounds like a headache. Whatever their rationale might be, I just rather get my cash, get it quickly, and move on from the property. And then that's where we come in and say, hey, we can check all those boxes on your needs list, but in order to do that, we have to buy this property at a discount. And here's what that discount is. Okay. And that's where we're able to create added safety and security and cash flow for the clients that we work with. All right. Moving down here on the math, you can see the owner finance buyer terms. The owner finance buyer is going to be the family that we put into the property. Okay, so you can see here the buy price was $145,000. We are going to obviously sell this property at its value. Even though we purchased it at $82,000, we're going to sell it at the $145,000. In this example, this family put $4,000 down payment. When the down payment's less than our minimum, which is very rare, we have another contract in place where we'll give the family anywhere from 6 to 12 months to get to that $15,000. In this case, pay us the extra $11,000 to get them into the ownership position. Okay. And then what we do is we put them on a 30-year note, and you can see the monthly principal and interest payment from our owner finance buyer is $1,447.65. Okay. Then we move on to client terms. This would be you, where we borrowed $82,000 from you at a 12% annualized interest only return. And you can see the math on that for monthly payments would be $820. So naturally, we get that $1,447 payment comes in. We turn around every month and push $820 of that into your bank account. And then the lifetime return potential, you can see there's where we get the $295,000, which I shared with you up front here at the top, the client's lifetime return potential of $295,000. This is where that math's coming from. If you as a client wanted to stay in the deal for the lifetime, in this case, it's a 30-year note, we could protect your initial $82,000 investment and pay you $820 a month for the next 360 months. All right. Hopefully that's clear. Moving over here to the right, you can see the client benefits. We've already talked about how you make your money when you buy, not when you sell. You increase the safety and security on your property when you buy, not when you sell. Our rule of thumb here is we always purchase at a minimum discount of 25%. Another way to look at that is 75% maximum loan to value. Okay, this deal obviously was a 44% discount and a 56% loan to value, but our sales team knows that when they're talking to homeowners, their stopping point in the negotiation is that 25% discount. If it gets any less than that, if the discount goes to 24%, literally 24%, it's a no. It's got to be 25% or more. Typically it's more, but we can make all the math work for everybody involved at 25% discounts. Okay. You can see we create maximum security for our clients with that first or second lien position. We obviously offer the monthly cash flow. We offer the long-term stability. If you want to keep your money out of the market, you don't want to play the roller coaster game of, making 10%, 12% one year in the market and then turning around and losing 27% the next year. You want that long-term stability of knowing, hey, you're going to be getting 12% monthly cash flow, or you're going to be getting 15% at the end of projects. We can provide that long-term stability for you. And then the last benefit there that we're talking about today is 100% hands-off. Okay, our team handles everything. Really, the only thing you have to handle is getting that money to us at the beginning of the deal, and then making sure that money, checking your bank account once a month if you're into the monthly cash flow, and just seeing that money sitting there. Okay, that's all you do. We handle 100% of everything else. The last thing we'll talk about here is the motivation. Our rule of thumb in our company is that everybody in the deal has to win, or we won't do the deal. Now, in every deal, there's really three key stakeholders. There's the homeowner, who we call our selling partner. There's the buyer that's moving into the house, and then there's you as our client. Okay, so our selling partner's motivation in this particular deal is they wanted to sell fast. This particular homeowner was a landlord. Their tenant had moved out, and they were tired of all the headaches we've already discussed. They didn't have the capital to reinvest back into the property to get it back up to standard, which in this case was going to be around $20,000. They didn't have that capital. And they even told us if they had it, they probably wouldn't want to do it because, they were burned out on being a landlord and dealing with tenants, and they didn't understand how to do owner financing. It's an entirely different model than the rental model. They didn't understand how to do it, didn't want to do it. They just wanted their money fast, and they wanted the headache off their plate, and they wanted to move on. And so we were able to check all those boxes for them. Our owner finance buyer, you can see here, was going through a divorce. He was the husband in the relationship, and he needed a place for his kids. He needed it fast. He didn't want to work with banks. I believe he was a business owner, so he was dealing with, all the red tape of that business owners have to deal with banks. He just didn't want to deal with any of it with the stress of the divorce. And so he was excited and happy to have this option. And then the motivation of our client was he wanted to keep his money moving in the real estate market so he could get those monthly returns. He was over the roller coaster ride of the stock market and the unrealized returns he was getting there, and he just wanted to see the returns in his account every month. Okay, so the whole point here is everybody in the deal was winning, and so we do the deal. And then the very last thing I'll share with you is probably one of our number one core beliefs, and this has to do with our owner finance buyers. A person paying $1,000 to rent would rather pay $1,000 to own. This is another one of our superpowers inside of our model. And the reason this is powerful is because we are able to buy our properties at such deep discounts. What that means is we can turn around and we can sell these properties to our owner finance buyers at the same monthly payment that they would pay if they were going to rent that same house. If you think about that, you'll begin to understand how powerful that is from the standpoint of creating another layer of safety and security for you and for your capital. And the reason for that is, let's imagine one of our buyers gets into a tough financial situation, maybe loses their job, dealing with some hardship in their life, and they're thinking, man, it's going to be really tough to make my payment this month on this house. Now, in a rental situation, a lot of renters will play the game where they just won't pay because they know it's going to take that landlord 60 to 90 days or longer to get them evicted. So they'll decide to pay their other bills and not pay their rental bill, and they'll just wait out the process. The landlord's got to give them 30 days to catch up. So now they've got a guaranteed 30 days of free rent. Then it's going to take another couple weeks to get into court. And then depending on how court goes, they could appeal. They could drag it out 90 days, no payments, and then they'll go get another place to rent. Now, in our model with owner financing, that doesn't happen because our buyers know that if they get evicted, they're losing that $15,000 to $30,000 down payment they gave us. That's number one. More importantly, back to this core belief, our buyers know if they don't make their payment, they're going to get evicted, they're going to lose their money, but then what's going to happen? They're going to have to find another place to stay. And guess what? That next place they're going to find to stay is probably going to be a rental because they're no longer going to be able to afford $15,000 to $30,000 down payment to buy another house. So now they're going to be renting, and that place they're going to try to find a rent that would be the same size, same comparable to the house that we had them in, is going to be the same price or more to rent. So now our buyers are having this conversation with themselves in that moment of hardship during their month. And it's happened many times where they go find the money and we get paid. I always find it fascinating how a buyer will call us and say, it's going to be a tough month. I don't know if I'm going to pay you. And I'll say, hey, listen, I'm sorry about what's going on. I just want to remind you that, if you don't pay us, we're going to have to foreclose on you. You're going to lose your down payment. I really encourage you to, do whatever you can to try to figure out how to make that payment. And then they'll go find the money. Okay. So again, this is just additional safety and security for your capital and for you as our client and for everybody involved in the deal. And we think that core belief is really one of our secret weapons inside of our model. Okay. Hopefully this all made sense to you. That's really all I had. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. If you haven't scheduled an appointment already, you can go to wealthpreservationmethod.com/call, and you can get on my calendar. The other thing you could do is you could send me a text message, which my phone number is 303-725-2299. You could say, hey, Chris, I just watched your case study video and I had some questions, and I'd be happy to jump on a call with you or go back and forth in text to help you get those questions answered. Ultimately, I'd welcome the opportunity to connect with you by phone and understand what your investing goals are, what you're currently doing, what you'd like to be happening with your investment capital, and see if making money together in real estate would be a good fit for both of us. We do take on average, about 3 new clients a quarter. That's about 1 a month. Sometimes it's a couple more, maybe it's a couple less, just depending on how much capital we've raised and how many deals we're doing. But a general rule of thumb is about 3 a quarter. If you'd like to get on the waiting list to be one of our next clients, really the only criteria for that is for us just to talk, because I want to make sure all your questions are answered. I want to make sure the model's crystal clear, and ultimately want to make sure, number one, you're excited, and number two, this really is a good fit for your capital and what you want to achieve. All right. So with that being said, thank you for your trust. I don't take it for granted. Hopefully we will connect at some point in the future to talk real estate, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.